I'm leaving you, George. I've already sold the beach house, and I'm starting a new life with Kyle. She laughed. I didn't. My name is George Whitaker. I'm 52 and have spent more than 2 decades negotiating high-stakes commercial real estate deals out of Jacksonville, Florida. I made a living finding hidden clauses, overlooked fine print, and opportunities where others only saw risk. But when it came to my own marriage, I wasn't nearly as careful. The call came on a Thursday while I was in Brussels, finalizing a distribution center purchase for a US-based logistics firm. For days into a transatlantic trip, and that's when Vanessa, my wife of 15 years, chose to end it all. Over the phone, 6,000 miles away. Kyle and I are starting fresh, she said confidently. Kyle Bennett, her personal trainer, 12 years younger, chronically broke, and once had the nerve to ask me how much my Rolex was worth. I sold the beach house yesterday. Got a great price. The buyer's moving in next week. I figured you wouldn't mind crashing at a hotel once you're back. You're hardly ever home anyway. I didn't scream. Didn't smash anything. Just stared out the window at the gray Brussels sky. Then, I calmly opened my laptop and wrote 2 emails. One to Monica Harrison, my trusted title agent, and another to Brian Eldridge, my longtime attorney. Subject: urgent, attempted fraudulent sale of real estate. As the rain started to sprinkle the streets below, I watched umbrellas bloom across the cobblestones like time-lapse flowers. Vanessa had underestimated me, deeply. She thought I'd crumble, quietly fade from the picture. But she'd made a fatal mistake. She forgot who I was. Vanessa always believed I was too obsessed with details. You read every single line like it's the Constitution. She used to tease me, waving off contracts like they were optional instructions. But what she never understood, or simply chose to ignore, is that the fine print is where the real power lies. We met 16 years ago at a real estate expo in Orlando. She was sharp, confident, dressed to kill, and working at a luxury property firm. I was instantly intrigued. Within a year, we were married in a no-frills courthouse ceremony. Just her sister and my brother were there. It was simple, real, or so I thought. 3 years later, we bought the Amelia Island Beach House, a 4-bedroom place with an oceanfront deck that stretched into the horizon. It cost me nearly everything, $1.2 million, drained savings, and a massive mortgage. I spent weekends hammering siding and rewiring the kitchen, while Vanessa poured herself into turning the place into a social sanctuary. Our forever home, she toasted one night, raising her wine glass under string lights I'd just installed. That night feels like a postcard from a different life. A few years in, she quit her job to launch her own interior design business. The flexibility meant she could tag along on some of my trips: Paris, Barcelona, Tokyo. We carved out a good life. Or I believed we had. Until, 2 years ago, the silence crept in. She stopped asking about my deals. Declined trips. Her texts lost warmth. Have a safe flight. Replaced, I miss you. Then came the gym sessions. 5 days a week with Kyle. At first, I supported her fitness journey. Everyone needs something of their own. But then the expenses started to appear. Spa retreats I never heard of. Dinners I wasn't invited to. She never offered explanations. And I never asked. Not directly. I just observed. And I prepared. Almost a year ago, I moved the title of the beach house into a living trust, something I'd structured into a stack of refinancing documents she barely skimmed, distracted by her phone. This protects us both, I told her. That part was true, just not in the way she imagined. Now, sitting at a hotel desk in Brussels, I pulled the original deed from my briefcase, something I kept on me ever since a client tried to back out of a deal years ago. The paper clearly stated, "The George Whitaker Living Trust, sole trustee, George Whitaker." Vanessa had no legal authority to sell the house. I called Brian as I wandered through the Grand Place, Belgium's architectural crown jewel. He listened quietly, then said the magic words. "She can't sell what she doesn't legally own. The buyers don't have a claim. It's fraud. Criminal fraud, if we chose to press." I told him I wasn't looking to see her in court. Not yet. But I wasn't about to lose everything either. He promised to flag the sale with the county and alert every major title company in the region. I ended the call and sat in a quiet corner cafe, watching people pass through the drizzle with urgency. And I thought, not about vengeance, but about clarity. This wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated cruelty. She'd laughed while telling me she sold our home. She'd counted on me rolling over. Instead, I was just getting started. I didn't alert Vanessa that I was coming back early. Instead, I booked the earliest flight from Brussels to Jacksonville, rented a car at the airport, and drove the familiar 40-minute stretch to Amelia Island. It was Saturday, just after noon, when I pulled into the driveway of what was still legally, and soon, publicly my house. Parked in my spot was a sleek black Mercedes I didn't recognize. But I didn't need to. I already knew whose it was. The front door was unlocked. From the hallway, I could hear laughter coming from the kitchen. Vanessa's voice mingled with a man's, Kyle's, and they were talking about taking down the living room wall for an open concept. Open concept, my ass. I left my suitcase at the entry and quietly made my way toward the voices. Vanessa leaned against the kitchen island, wearing a dress I'd never seen and sipping champagne like it was just another casual Saturday. Kyle stood behind her, one arm draped over her waist as he pointed to something on a tablet. Renovation plans, I presumed. They looked up as I entered. Her smile stuttered for a moment. "George," she said, struggling to hide her surprise. "I thought you weren't back until Monday." "Clearly," I replied, my eyes briefly flicking to Kyle, who, to his credit, quickly let go of her waist. "This is, awkward," Kyle said, forcing a chuckle. "I should probably head out." "Actually," I said, stepping fully into the room, "I think you should stay. This involves you too." Vanessa's face changed. Hardened. That overly calm voice women use when they've already decided you're the problem surfaced. "Let's not make this ugly, George. I've been unhappy for a long time. We both deserve better." I nodded. "Agreed. Which is why I've already spoken to my attorney about the fraudulent sale you attempted." Her glass lowered slightly. "What are you talking about?" I opened my briefcase, retrieved the documents, and placed them carefully on the counter. "This house isn't yours to sell, Vanessa. Hasn't been for almost a year. Remember those papers you signed last May? The refinancing ones you didn't bother reading while texting your friend?" Kyle looked at her. "You said it was done. You said the house was sold." Was, she stammered, grabbing the documents. As she read, her face went pale. "The deed is in the name of the George Whitaker Living Trust," I said calmly. "I'm the only trustee. You never had the authority to sell this property. The buyer has already been notified." Kyle, now visibly shrinking, mumbled, "I'll wait in the car," and slipped out before either of us could stop him. Vanessa's expression shifted again, from shock to fury. "You tricked me." "No," I replied evenly. "I protected myself. Something I do for a living. You didn't read the paperwork. That's negligence, not deceit." Her tone changed. Softer. Manipulative. "George, come on. We can split the profit. We don't have to get lawyers involved." "There are already lawyers involved," I said. "Mine, the buyers, possibly even the prosecutors, if this goes further." "You wouldn't," she said in a whisper. "I haven't done anything," I said. "But I'm going to enforce my rights. What happens next is entirely your decision." She grabbed her phone, muttering something about her sister's lawyer. "You won't get away with this." I didn't argue. "Call whoever you want. I'll be at the Hilton tonight. But just so we're clear, this house isn't for sale. And I'll be moving back in on Monday." I turned to leave. Her voice followed me. "This isn't over, George." I stopped, looked back at her, still standing in the kitchen we'd renovated together, her glass still in hand. "No," I said. "I think it is." Sunday morning, I met Brian at his office, quiet and empty except for him and a folder that already sat open on the polished mahogany desk. "There's more," he said, not wasting time on pleasantries. "After your call, I had one of our investigators dig a little deeper." He pushed the folder toward me. Inside were bank records, credit card statements, property applications, most of which I'd never seen before. "Vanessa opened a separate bank account over a year ago," Brian said. "She's been moving money from your joint savings, about $170,000 in total." The number hit me like a wave to the chest. That was the majority of our emergency savings. And that's not all. He slid another document across the desk. Lease agreements. Signed 3 months ago. One in her name, the other in Kyle's. They're launching a boutique gym in Savannah. I just stared at the paperwork. Silent. This wasn't a fling. It wasn't a midlife crisis. It was a strategy, months in the making. She'd been liquidating our assets behind my back and building a business with the man she left me for. She wasn't selling the house to get out of a marriage. I said aloud, more to myself than to Brian. She needed startup capital. Brian nodded grimly. "And guess who owns the company that tried to buy your beach house?" I looked up slowly. Jason Bennett, Kyle's brother. They were attempting a friendly purchase, well below market value. assuming you'd be forced to renegotiate once the fraud came out. The pieces clicked into place with cold precision. It hadn't just been betrayal. It had been theft, premeditated and hidden behind champagne smiles and beach sunsets. I sat back, feeling something shift. That calm resolve I'd carried since her call was changing, sharpening. This is no longer about salvaging assets, I said. This is about holding them accountable. What are your options? I asked. Brian leaned back in his chair. Legally, you're well protected. The trust holds. The attempted sale is invalid. We can freeze your shared accounts immediately. And the money she already moved? He hesitated. It's more complicated. Florida law treats marital assets under equitable distribution. But the fraudulent sale gives us significant leverage. At minimum, it's a civil issue. At worst, criminal fraud. Maybe grand theft. I shook my head. I don't want to press charges unless she refuses to settle. Brian nodded. Then here's my suggestion. He slid a clean packet forward, a proposed divorce agreement. She returns 60% of the funds she withdrew, forfeits any claim to the house or trust properties. You waive rights to her new business. No criminal charges. And if she won't agree, Brian's jaw set. Then we pursue full legal remedies, civil and criminal. I left the office determined. The sun was out as I walked to my car, but the weather didn't register. My mind was locked in. By late afternoon, Vanessa texted. My lawyer says you're bluffing. Trusts don't override joint ownership. See you in court. I showed Brian the message. She's getting bad advice, he muttered. The trust is airtight. Send the settlement anyway. Let's see if reason works. That night, I sat in my hotel room going over every financial document we'd ever shared. Each charge, each hidden transaction, all evidence of how calculated she'd been. This was no accident. No heat of the moment mistake. And I wasn't letting it go. Monday morning, I checked out of the Hilton and headed straight to the courthouse. Brian had already filed the divorce petition and an emergency injunction to prevent any further property transfers. By 10 a.m., the judge signed the order. Vanessa could no longer sell the beach house. Not that she ever had the right in the first place. Next stop, First Coast Bank. Thomas Parker, the branch manager and an old business associate of mine, helped separate all remaining joint accounts. Within an hour, Vanessa no longer had access to any of my financials. Anything else I can do? Thomas asked as we finished up. Yeah, I said. Kill any auto payments to Elite Fitness. And anything else she snuck onto my accounts. He clicked around, frowning. There's been a $300 recurring charge every month for a year and a half. Cancel it, I said. Immediately. By noon, I'd updated my cards, called HR to adjust my benefits, and finalized the last pieces of insurance paperwork. One by one, I was unspooling 15 years of entanglement. My phone buzzed nonstop. Vanessa, her sister, an unknown number I assumed was her attorney. I ignored them all. By 2 p.m., I returned to the beach house. Her car was gone, but the Mercedes was still parked in the driveway. I walked in with my key, half expecting it wouldn't work. It did. Inside, Kyle was stuffing clothes into a duffel bag in the living room. His eyes went wide when he saw me. I was just grabbing my stuff, he said quickly. I didn't reply. I just stood there. He fidgeted. Vanessa said you were trying to ruin her. That you were controlling. That you. I cut him off. And the business you were about to start with stolen funds. Was that my fault too? The look in his eyes said everything. He knew. Tell Vanessa she has 48 hours to accept the settlement offer, I said. Or we go to court. And if she wants to know what happens when you commit fraud, she can ask your brother Jason. I'll have no problem adding him to the list. Kyle froze. You can also tell him to withdraw his fake offer on the house by end of day, unless he wants to be named in the investigation. He didn't say a word, just bolted for the door. Within an hour, Brian called. Jason just pulled the offer through the agent. Good. That evening, I changed the locks, reset the security system, and installed cameras. Then I ordered seafood from the restaurant Vanessa and I used to visit, ate dinner alone on the deck, and watched the tide roll in, steady, indifferent to human drama. I wasn't happy. Not yet. But I felt grounded. Safe. The house was mine. The truth was out. And tomorrow, the final chapter would begin. 3 weeks later. Brian's conference room was tense but quiet. Vanessa sat across from me, stony and silent. Her new attorney, young, clearly nervous, flipped through documents like he was looking for a magic trick. This hearing was supposed to be procedural, Brian began. But given the evidence, we think it's time to settle. He slid 3 documents across the table: the trust deed, Vanessa's bank transfers, and an affidavit signed by Jason Bennett admitting to the fraudulent house deal. Her attorney scanned them, then leaned in and whispered to Vanessa. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word. "We're prepared to settle," her attorney finally said. Brian outlined the terms. Vanessa would return $100,000 of the withdrawn funds. She'd give up all claims to the beach house and any other trust-held properties. I'd waive rights to her business and agree not to pursue criminal charges. Vanessa finally spoke. "And if I say no?" Brian didn't flinch. "Then we forward all this to the district attorney. Fraud over $100,000 carries weight in this state." After a long pause, her lawyer said, "We need a moment." 17 minutes later, they returned. "We accept." She didn't look at me as she signed. I didn't gloat. I didn't speak. I just signed where Brian pointed. It was done. 6 months later, I stood on the beach house deck with a cup of coffee, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic. The house had changed, kitchen renovated, siding replaced, hurricane-proof windows installed. It felt stronger now. So did I. Through mutual acquaintances, I'd heard Vanessa and Kyle open their fitness studio in Savannah, a smaller location than they'd planned. Business wasn't booming. I felt no pleasure in that. Just a distant ache for what could have been, had honesty been part of the equation. The divorce had finalized 3 months earlier, without another word between us. She'd returned the funds, and I invested them into a small office building downtown. Reliable tenants. Steady return. My phone rang. "Monica Harrison. How's the beach house?" she asked. "Better every day," I answered. "Good. Because I found another opportunity. Commercial, clean, stable. Like last time." "Send it to me," I said, smiling. "I'm interested." After we hung up, I stood for a while longer, watching waves come and go. Calm, repetitive, unstoppable. The house. It was just wood and glass. But it was mine. And sometimes, that's everything. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you.